Hello world, in this video I'm going to show you how I set up Claude, so Claude Code on Windows for my vibe coding projects. And as an example here, there is one of the projects. This is a RAG application in Streamlit, and it allows me to do different kinds of RAGs, search types like hybrid, simulatory keywords and so on. I can upload documents here, and then I can just paste my question here, and then I can just run this. So like that, and then it just searches through the document, and then it starts actually here generating the answer, right? And this based on the search type and all the other kinds of parameters, of course, which I set here. So just a second, and there we go. We're good to go, and you can see that's a hybrid search. In this case, it's actually like that. And also there's a file management, which gives us more information about how many chunks I've uploaded and so on. So that's basically the application. That's just one example, but this could be also a kind of project you do. No? And now let me walk you through the setup which I'm going to use when I code this. So I open here already Cursor. So I'm using Cursor as my IDE. You could also use a different IDE, for instance, Visual Studio Code, because we actually run it in Claude Code, so in the command line, so it does not really matter which kind of IDE you use, actually. The first thing you'll notice here is that I'm running this on a Windows operating system, so this makes it a little bit tricky, at least, because Claude, by default, so Claude Code, runs on Linux, or in this case, if you want it on Windows, in WSL. So you need to install this in order to run this in the command line. That's the first point. And the second point, which you also need to be aware of, because I experienced some kind of issues, because I was constantly switching between Claude, developing on WSL, and one side and other side, I'm trying to run it in the command line on Windows. So you should be really clear, and that's what I did in my instructions. So I said Claude exactly, okay, the best setup is actually if you create the code, you're running in WSL on Windows, but I want to run later the whole application in the command line. So as you can see here, I'm running the Streamlit application here in my command line. That's why. And I specified that in Claude when I structure the project. So Claude is then aware, and then you get less errors regarding these kinds of options. So keep this in mind. I would recommend that doing that. If you have the same situation like me, that you do not have a Linux or Mac system, but you're running this on Windows, then keep this in mind. Okay, that's the first thing. Next, what is also already created is this settings local JSON file. So by default, when you start actually with Claude Code and you're running projects, even if you are on the auto mode, as you can see here, I'm currently in this auto mode, at the beginning, you are always asked about certain commands. So is Claude allowed, for instance, to initialize a Git repository, or using EUV commands, here the Git commands and so on, or also using MCP servers. And if you will allow this each time in the project, then by default, the settings local JSON file is created. And what I did was I just saved this. So as soon as I have all the allowed commands in here, I save it somewhere. And whenever I create a new project, I just then paste the .claude folder, including the static local JSON file, and then none of these default commands Claude will ask me in the terminal here, even if you are on an auto accept, as I said. So that would be also something I would recommend. There's also a kind of, I think, YOLO mode or God mode, I don't know how it's called. Then Claude is running completely on its own, but I would be very careful with that, because actually you probably don't want this. It can, because actually anything could happen on your system. So I would be a little bit more careful, but if you have, for instance, these kinds of permissions and you provide them by default, then Claude, when it runs in auto accept mode, will never ask you about these. And I think with the Git commands, the MCP servers I want to use, and the bash commands here, like make directory, UV and so on, this is pretty fine for me, so I do not get bothered regarding this. And Claude is doing and operating on its own, so I don't need to manually interfere. So that's one point. Then the most interesting part probably is actually when you create the prompt, then by default what you want is you want some kind of product requirement document, right? And this now has been transferred by many online, that they say you do not need a PRD, but you need what's still actually abbreviated as PRD, but it's a maybe prompt requirements document. And I'm going to show you how that looks for me. I have a memory bank here, that's what I call it, and it has different kinds of markdown files here, which are used by Claude when it's referencing and creating the project. And let me walk you through them. So first off, there's an active context. The active context, I'm going to show you what's in there. So let me just make this a little bigger. So basically what Claude is doing here, it's writing down the current status. It's writing down here the current focus, what it's focusing on regarding the development, what are the recent changes it has implemented, what are the immediate next steps, and also what is the context for future sessions. So this is something which is updated constantly during the project development by Claude. So that's very helpful, because then the Claude Code knows exactly, okay, this is what I'm currently focusing on, what that comes next, that's what I've already done, and so on. And of course, also when you maybe stop the project and you want to restart it later on, it's still very helpful, that because then Claude can just look up the active context and know exactly where it stopped, and then continue working on the project. Then I also have development patterns in here, as you can see. This is just some kind of conventions. So in this case, I'm primarily programming with Python. That's why the conventions are in Python, like file naming, variable naming, and so on. And there are also some kind of examples already in here. You don't have to do it probably, but I think it's best practice to have this, so I included this. And also some kind of testing strategy, logging and monitoring and so on, performance patterns, so a lot of things are included in here. And this of course varies a little bit on the project, as you can see here, because I have a Streamlit application, then it also gives me some caching regarding Streamlit, for instance. So that's the development pattern. So there you have, if you use some kind of React or other kinds of frameworks, then you probably have something similar, but based of course and focused on React code, for instance. Then I have a progress tracker in here. This is also a tracker which gives Claude an overview of where are we currently, right? This is just kind of checkboxes where you also see this in terminal. If you do the wipe coding, then what is currently working on, is it done, and then it crosses out normally a list, and here we have some kind of checkboxes, right? And there you can also some additional information like in progress, planned, known issues, and so on. So really like a real project, a programming project kind of, right? So then we also have a project brief. This is kind of the PRD, if you want to state it this way. So this includes the problem statement, the solution approach, the target users, success criteria, and also what's in scope and what is out of scope, what are the key constraints. So this is actually really like a real project. So an IT project, because you also have there the constraints, you have the budget, you have what's in scope, out of scope, what are the KPIs and so on. So all this is included in here. So that's also helpful to get a sense of what the project is all about. And that's what we provide Claude. But of course, this is only one part of the whole, as you can see in the memory bank. Because we already covered the active context, the development patterns, so more on the technical side regarding the project brief, and also the progress tracker. Next, we also have the technical context, which is this one here. This also specifies then a little bit more. This is not about the development patterns itself, but rather the technology stack, what you're going to use. So Python, Streamlit, a Quadrant, which I'm using here as my vector store, what kind of large language model you're going to use, the embeddings and so on, the architecture. As you can see here, these are a few informations about that, which are set up, and also here some kind of setup commands. So this is a technical context. It's related to development patterns, but the patterns are more about how to write code, and this is more about what kind of technical expertise or functions, codes, and so on libraries are going to use. And then finally there is this user preferences markdown file, which are also a few additional information about discovery preferences. So as you can see here, this is something which I specified in the prompt. As you can see here, it's listed there one more time. This is specific to me and my development style, but you can see, and also, of course, the project you can see it, but here I really am clear, because I really mentioned that even twice when I do the setup, that I am on Windows, and you, Claude, are developing in WSL. And I want to run this in a Windows terminal. So I explicitly stated it in the prompt, and that's why it's also here in the user preferences, where Claude set this up, just to make sure that this is not forgotten, because this is really important if you are on a Windows operating system. It's my personal experience, because otherwise you run into a lot of issues. At least that was the case for me, and with this, this really helped solving this. And yeah, that's basically it. So this is the setup, the memory bank. So I have all these files created up front. And then during the development phase, of course, then the active context and the progress tracker, these are updated by Claude. But this is basically the structure which Claude Code hopefully helps. And it really helps. That's my personal experience when you do the vibe coding stuff, right? And of course, this means that you have less errors, and it's also a little bit less frustrating. But because even with AI, if you run into errors all the time and issues, then of course it's still frustrating. So that's basically it. So now you got it. Here you have it. This is my setup. And the only thing which I did not show you right now is what you can also do. And I would recommend, if you have certain kinds of commands, so arguments, then you could also use them inside here in Claude Code, right? So that just means that you, inside the, I think it's also in the .claude folder, you can create commands. So I think it's a command folder in there, and then you just type in markdown files, and in these markdown files you can specify commands, and then in the terminal itself you can simply type slash and then the command name, as you can see here, slash and then the command name, and then you can run exactly what you specified in the markdown file. That's also kind of helpful, which you can also add to this. And last one, which is currently still new, is Claude Hooks, which you can also use in the project. But there, before you do this, I would recommend that you also have a look at the, well, let's say the warning which come from Anthropic regarding hooks, because hooks can also be manipulated and then create certain kinds of issues. So before you try them out, I would at least recommend that you read through that. Okay, that's it for my setup. So if you got questions, let me know. If you have your own setup and want to share experiences, also please add this in the comment section. And if you have not subscribed to the channel so far, please subscribe. Thanks a lot, and hopefully see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.